Hi guys, welcome to this special episode of RiPA Bites. After 3 years, we finally managed to bag ourselves a guest. Now, this chap, he spent most of his life studying UFO phenomena, and recent years, I guess in a spiritual way, he's learned that he can actually communicate with the dead. It's going to have some very interesting stories. It's going to be some interesting topics that we're going to talk about. So, without further ado, let me introduce you, Philip Kinsella.
Thank you.
Hi, Philip. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We appreciate you coming in. As you see, we've got the posh biscuits out, especially for you. We haven't got the silverware because Alex here can't be trusted with that. Okay. So, what the guys want to know initially is about you, because you're on this spiritual path, and you've managed to come up with the theory that connects your spiritual path to the UFOs.
Yes.
So where do we all start?
Well, I can start from the beginning. I started to get involved in UFO research because as a child I saw a UFO, and my twin and I have a twin brother as well, Ronald. We both seen one with our grandmother. And it was a silver orb that came through on a beautiful summer's afternoon, and to my grandmother it was just an everyday thing, but to us as kids it was something really quite spectacular, and it was the talk of the family for a long time. And then it wasn't until 1989 where I had a very strange or bizarre experience that I couldn't explain, that involved an entity. And that blew open something that I assumed then was what we call an abduction. At the time, back in 1989, there was no way of identifying or putting pieces together of the pattern of what an abduction was. But it was a very negative, very challenging experience, and I had physical marks after that. It was then that I became obsessed with UFO research and started to try and branch out to make my own understanding of what we were dealing with, because most of the other people in mainstream weren't talking about it, especially in the media world. They were just poking fun at it. But I'm a serious guy, and I wanted to find out what it was that I'd seen, what I'd experienced, and I wanted to get to the root of it. And it led from then onwards into many later years into the UFO phenomena, and dealing and mixing with some wonderful research, some people who we pool all our ideas together, and trying to find out the answer to that. Yeah.
So when you first started on UFO journey, was you kind of cautious because you knew that people won't take you seriously?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the thing is, though, most people still feel that people who have an experience of a supernatural or alien kind are to be pigeonholed and put in a box. And certainly through my experiences with mainstream television, I then began to understand that there was some form of control mechanism to this, because in the live shows I appeared on, they wouldn't give you a chance to speak about what you had to say. And if it was pre-recorded, they'd cut out what you wanted to say. And it wasn't until some years later that I thought, there's something not right here. All these people are coming on. Of course, you have to, separate the people who are fakes, or the frauds, or the disinformers, to the people who actually believe in the subject. In a scientific level as well, or a mainstream area of thinking, laterally thinking. But when you're dealing with areas of the psyche or the UFO phenomena, you seem to get led down darker corridors with no end in sight.
So further down the corridor you go, the more doors open up.
Yeah, and the more things come forward. You have to be very careful when you're doing a research, either into the psychic phenomena or UFOs, because you will inevitably find people trying to lead you down different corridors that you don't feel familiar with or comfortable with. But basically the main area of my research was the UFO phenomena. As I said, I've met some amazing people, Peter Robbins, Larry Warren. I teamed up with Brenda Butler, who was one of the first investigators into the Rendlesham UFO case, and that was after we had gone to do our own initial investigations into the Rendlesham Forest area, because we'd been told by Peter Robbins that there was still activity happening there. And of course everyone believes that the 1980 event with the military troops was the only one true event. What I couldn't understand was why people weren't talking about the events before and afterwards. So that's where I teamed up with Brenda Butler, and we punched out Sky Crash Throughout Time, a continued investigation into the Rendlesham UFO mystery, whereas she had published the book Sky Crash Throughout Time, a Cosmic Conspiracy with General Randalls and Dot Street. So I then found myself getting involved in this area, like all of us, into areas where it's fated. where you're meant to be led somewhere, even though you can't explain that. For instance, I remembered when I started going to the forest, or Rendlesham Forest, I had no idea where Brenda Butler was in the world. I remembered saying out when Susan and Ronald, my twin, and myself were doing our investigations, I wish that Brenda Butler was here. And who should we meet on that very night in the forest was Brenda Butler. Had no idea she lived up there, and we introduced ourselves, and she, along with her partner, then showed us a video of an alien they'd caught on camera. And it was quite spectacular.
Was the alien the classic almond eyes greys?
It was more like a grey, but it was floating above the ground. And this is something that you don't see again on mainstream television. And I felt like I'd bagged a gold of money after meeting with Brenda. And it didn't end there. I mean, we started to meet up, and she took us around the forest, and she's an amazing person. Very strong-willed. She'll have no nonsense.
I suppose you have to be in that sort of line.
That's right. I think Brenda dealt a lot with the negative side also, because the Americans were all about the 1980s case. I understand that something happened there, but we were trying to primarily base our book on things that happened afterwards and before the initial event in 1980. So yeah, and of course I've been witness to quite a lot of UFO activity. And we did perform an psychic experiment, in the forest back in 1998, where we had summoned a craft.
Okay, so you done a psychic call out for a craft. Did the craft come down in the physical world or in the psychic world?
No, in the physical world. I'll explain how that happened if you want me to.
Yeah, sure.
We had been doing investigations to the forest. We'd seen some really strange things, but we wanted something bigger, something more positive. So Susan, my twin brother, and myself, our little ghost busting team, decided that the week before we went to Rendlesham Forest, that we'd set the date, that we would meditate and ask the occupants, whoever, whatever they were, if they could reveal themselves to us. We'd take no cameras, no recording equipment, nothing. We wanted to see them. The week came and we travelled up there. And I was where the area was. It's part of a bit of a field that's half derelict and half crop, and it was roughly about 20 to 10 at night. And I used some dowsing rods to find a particular area so that we could sit in the field. It was stars were out, the moon was out, beautiful night, absolutely beautiful. And we were careful because across the land was a farmer, and he was renowned for firing off guns, because obviously Rendlesham is quite a hotspot for UFO activity and for people to be there. But at this time there was no one there. In fact, there's hardly anyone in the forest, contrary to popular belief. So we crept in there. We sat there for about 15 minutes meditating. After 15 minutes, we came out and we stood up and we saw a red light. One single red light. And we thought, first of all, that the farmer had got into his car and was coming across the field towards us. It's quite a distance. But on closer inspection, it wasn't a headlight to a car. It was a spinning orb, and it was coming towards us. And then it shot straight across the forest and disappeared with great speed. And we thought, wow, that was amazing, incredible. But then what happened next was that there was a flash of light beyond the trees, and there appeared, I have documented this in my UFO book, Believe in Sky Crash, there appeared a pyramidal device, perfect pyramid, like a shape, and a gap, and a circular under appendage. They seemed to be connected but weren't. There's a gap. I felt they were one of the same craft. And this part was moving this way, that part was moving that way. And on the top of the craft, there was lots of lights coming from it, emanating from deep inside its source. And under the middle part was like these small bank of blue lights. Well, I can't explain how I felt. I started to run towards it like a half-crazed hominid. Fear, excitement, trepidation, I don't know what. I was running towards it because it was there physically. And as I started to run through the second half to the field where the farmer had his crop, I remember my jeans getting soaking wet because of all the dew from obviously the day before, whatever. And I got closer and closer, calling back, tell me it's a triangle, tell me it's glowing, because I wanted to confirm that what I was seeing was the same as what they were seeing. And when I got underneath it, it was quite big. I tripped, fell, took in a load of dirt in my mouth, and then it just went out, gone. And I remembered afterwards I cried, and then I laughed because I thought no one would believe us. And at that point, it didn't matter. It was like I'd been given $1 million.
So it's like a personal Jesus to yourself.
Yeah. I didn't see any aliens, and I remembered when we went back that night, the early hours of the morning, I didn't sleep, I wasn't hungry, I was buzzing, and I contacted UFO magazine, and I spoke to an editor called Bream Forbes, who wanted me to send everything to him so he could send it to Peter Robbins, and I thought, well, why would he want me to send them to him to send it to Peter Robbins? I wasn't in personal contact with Peter Robbins then, I'd met him. So we had just done that, sent them off, and I didn't hear anything, and I phoned the magazine up. There was no one of that name at the magazine, no one. And I thought, I'm going crazy. Why would anyone want, 3 people testing me into something if no one was taking it seriously? So I documented the event and left it at that. Needless to say, we tried again for the experiment, it didn't work. So if you ask me, was that us generating that? I couldn't answer that question. We sent out an intent consciously, and it appeared that our intentions were answered. I didn't know what to expect, but most people will tell you, well, why don't you take a film of it or take a camera? That was not what we wanted. And even if we had filmed it and brought that back as reality, it would have been shredded to pieces in the world of ufology. There's no point. But to my heart and my soul and Ronald's and Susan's, that was the most amazing experience that I've ever had with a UFO.
So that was like the UFO equivalent of the skull experiment.
The skull experiment, yes, I am familiar with the skull experiment.
Yeah, there was a bunch of people who psychically emanated a spirit by the name of Philip, coincidentally. And but unfortunately they didn't document it either, so it was close to them, a secret that they can hold and probably take to the grave with them.
Mm-hmm.
But let's wind it back. Your initial introduction to UFOs was from your granny. You touched upon that earlier, but did she used to call them fairies?
Yes, she did. Yeah, she said it's fairies that come to take a closer look at us. And of course, that I think and believe that was her way of trying to soften what she may have known more about them. And my grandmother was psychic, but not to the point of taking the stage. She knew things that other people wouldn't know. Used to get us in trouble sometimes if we spilt the beans, but she was an incredible lady. And after her passing, she passed the same month and same year as Princess Diana. I went to go and see a medium, and she was the first person to come through. And it was at that point where the medium, who used to work for the FBI in America, had told me that I would be a medium and that I would be writing books on psychic matters and UFOs. And I said, no, I would be writing books on children's books and science fiction. And she said, no, that's not going to happen. And she said that I would be back in 2 years' time, among other things that she told me about past lives and things that at that time I couldn't quite comprehend because my head was more into the UFO field than it was in the psychic phenomena. However, when I'd finished with the reading with Pearl, I got into my car and I put my head down on the steering wheel and cried my eyes out. And it felt like a great big weight had lifted. And it was that point when I thought, hang on a minute, I'm dealing with the dead here now. Where does the UFO field come into this? And I knew that they were probably 2 separate entities, but there was a connection on some level. At that time, I didn't know how to make the connection. In fact, at that time of my life, when I'd first gone to see the medium, my journey started as a medium. And I can make it clear to you, I had no wish to be a medium. It wasn't something I set out to do. But I feel that deep inside, I wanted truth. I wanted the truth that we were more than flesh and blood creatures with a sell-by date. I like that.
Oh, we know.
And I also believed that there had to be some purpose to our continuation as human beings. It didn't make sense that we lived in a world that no one spoke about life or death or UFOs. It was all pushed under the carpet. And society was going around like robots. And I thought I was a freak until I met a lot of other freaks, and they were wonderful, and I loved it.
You're one big collection of freaks like us lot here at RiPA.
I love it. I think we're more normal than most of the others out there, I can tell you.
Well, you touched on the connection between psychic world and UFOs.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we had a chap who was with her for a while, and he claimed that it might be true, so don't laugh at this, folks, it might be true. half his brain spoke to aliens, the other half spoke to the dead. How would that resonate with you?
I'm not really sure. I would say that in my opinion, the human brain is the modulator for bringing consciousness in and holding it in this form. With regards to alien communication and spirit communication, I would only be able to tell you that through communicating from those on the other side, that they may use the same practice as, say, an alien. I don't think that there would be any separation within the human brain to say that this part's for the alien and this part's for the dead. I consider the human brain to be a modulator that can affix to any form of dimensional opening, whether positive or negative. It's a mechanism to receive transmissions and send them out, like a radio. A radio box or radio or television, the physical apparatus, doesn't care what signal it's getting. It'll still work on the same method of how it should work. It's how we interpret the information. So I feel that we have to be very careful when we're making that fact known, because there's no way of proving that. But what we do understand is that the human brain is basically a receiver for consciousness. It could be a consciousness that is on a higher level of vibration or a lower vibration. It depends on the interpreter or the instrument who's connecting with this and feels what it may be. So that's the only way I can say to you. Or with regards to the UFO phenomena that I've been involved with, I had a very negative experience, whereas I understand that when I'm dealing with those who have crossed over, so to speak, they come on a very positive vibration. So my interpretation is that with regards to the UFO field, I'm not saying that they're all good. I feel that there may be some good ones, but a lot of them are negative experiences. And this is where we come into the whole paradigm of understanding what are we dealing with? Why is it being covered up? Why is no one being told anything? And if someone's keeping a secret, is either one, to protect themselves or to protect the people.
So guys, what is the secret? We're going to take a break now, but join us when we return for more on this secret, more about Rendlesham and more about the spirit world.